Incredible journey. 15 years after adoption, two girls reveal amazing tribute to their loving dad. Chloe brushed her fingers across the dusty cardboard box, years of neglect swirling in a cloud around her. The summer sun flickered through the attic's small window, casting a patchwork of light on forgotten memorabilia. With every creak of the floorboard, a wave of desperation washed over her, the uncertainty of what they might uncover squeezing her chest. Emma was at her side, her enthusiasm palpable, but Chloe felt anchored, weighed down by the shadows of their past. The prospect of sharing their father's story sent ripples of angst across her mind. Every decision felt monumental, every revelation scrutinized in the glare of potential judgment. What if they unearthed something dark, something that changed everything? The letters, the medals, these artifacts held more than just memories. They carried the weight of their father's unspoken struggles. "Do you think he would want us to do this?" Emma's voice broke through her thoughts, a gentle prompt tinged with trepidation. Chloe hesitated, the doubt creeping in once more. She flashed back to their childhood. Their father's laughter echoed in her mind, yet it was often drowned out by the sheer weight of making ends meet. The fear of failure clung to her like a second skin. Chloe longed to honor his memory, but feared exposing them to a community that had its own history of judgment and prejudice. Fears of being labeled as outsiders, as the children of someone they barely understood. As they sifted through the crumbling papers, Chloe's fingers trembled over a letter filled with phrases challenging prejudice, a side of their father she'd never seen. Her heartbeat quickened. Would the townsfolk see the man she'd adored, or would they only acknowledge the complexities of his life? What if they chose to overlook the very essence of his resilience? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The contents of another box caught her eye. Fundamental evidence of their father's contributions to the town's culture. Acknowledgements, plaques. Yet her heart sank as she read between the lines of his struggle against judgment. Would Emma's vibrant artwork convey the truth, or would it merely reflect their pain back at them, distorting their father's intent? Chloe looked at Emma, who was lost in her task, her paintbrush swirling with vivid colors, emotion pouring onto canvas. But here, Chloe stood frozen, her own canvas blank, filled with fear and doubt. Was she ready to carry her father's legacy, or would she stumble over the weight of history? As they prepared for the exhibition, Chloe's mind raced with insecurity. Each piece represented hours of work. Every brushstroke recorded their father's existence. Yet the nagging voice of doubt rippled through her. What if no one came? What if their story was seen as unworthy, framed through the lens of their father's flaws? The mere thought tightened the muscles in her shoulders. She wished for the courage to confront the inevitable judgment, but it felt like a chasm growing between them, a silent war between embracing their truth and silencing the familial ghosts that loomed large. On the eve of their exhibition, the atmosphere thickened. A community leader picked apart the very foundation they intended to build, questioning the validity of their father's struggles. Chloe stood rigid, a mix of anger and fear surging within her, as Emma's gaze met hers, a silent plea for strength. The fragile threads of hope began to unravel. Would they rise above the doubts reaching out to grab them, or was this the moment they lost the fight? At that crossroads, the air was heavy with tension, the weight of their father's legacy pressing down as the night loomed darker, and uncertainty hung just out of reach like a storm ready to break. Chloe took a deep breath, her mind racing as night enveloped the attic, shadows creeping into the corners of the room where memories lay dormant. The fear she felt split her head wide open, revealing relentless thoughts pounding against her psyche. Thoughts that mocked her commitment to honoring their father's memory. Thoughts that whispered she was never enough. Emma's vibrant colors danced across the canvas, and Chloe felt an acute sense of envy and admiration. Emma was fearless in her artistic expression, while Chloe wavered in the light of criticism and self-doubt. Glancing at her sister, Chloe realized that she needed to channel her insecurities into something constructive rather than letting them anchor her to failure. Emma's challenge guided her back to their father's letters, where words poured out from a soul fighting against the tide, challenging hatred with self-affirmation. What if those same words were her compass? Her fingers trailed over the letters, and her heart stumbled upon a singular phrase. To speak the truth is to illuminate the dark. With a newfound sense of urgency, she shuffled to find a blank notebook stowed among the boxes. She would echo her father's voice by writing her own story. But could her journey carry the weight of his? Would she find the courage to pen her vulnerabilities, her experiences? Chloe pulled open the notebook, facing the empty pages like blank canvases, either a sanctuary of expression or a stage for her doubts. Emma's laughter echoed in the background, pulling Chloe from the grip of her apprehensions. "Chloe! You've got to see this!" The urgency in her voice beckoned. She rushed to Emma's side, her sister's painted piece transforming before her eyes, a radiant explosion of colors symbolizing strength in adversity. Almost instinctively, Emma added layers of texture, bringing life to struggles Chloe had always viewed as burdens. The concept of their father's legacy shifted in Chloe's mind. It was not merely to be preserved, but to be re-examined, to be celebrated through creativity. As Chloe picked up a paintbrush, hesitant yet inspired, she splashed bold hues onto her canvas, an immediate rebellion against her uncertainties. Each stroke unleashed emotions that had long been dormant, untangling a string of unresolved feelings connected to their father. In that moment, Chloe chose vulnerability over perfection. Her brush glided across the surface, unveiling fragments of her story, struggles, love, and acceptance intertwined like vine and thorn. Her mind began weaving narratives from the letters, memories of her father supporting them through every setback. She immersed herself in newfound purpose, no longer fearful of community judgment. Instead, she envisioned sharing her truths, the messy and hard-edged beauty of familial love and strife. Her heart raced with embers of determination. Perhaps sharing their father's history could liberate not just them, but others battling hidden burdens. When night fell, the tension that filled the attic transformed. The air became charged with potential rather than fear. Chloe sensed Emma's gaze, filled with understanding and support, unwavering in the face of their shared past. They were not merely retelling their father's story, they were reshaping it alongside their own paths. But as the thrill of creation flooded through her, Chloe's thoughts lingered on the community leader, his skepticism seeping through her resolve like poison. Would her voice be enough to cut through judgment as her father's once had? Tomorrow would be their chance to confront that judgment head-on, to stand before their community armed with truth and creativity. Chloe inhaled deeply, steadied by the promise of possibility. The canvas filled with vivid narratives, each stroke pushing back against the shadows that haunted her. It was time to rise above and reshape the narrative. As exhaustion threatened to claim her, a fleeting thought sliced through the fog. What if her initiative sparked other untold stories from the past? Would they dare to speak out as she now was? The dawn of revelation was nearing, and in that surge of hope, fear transformed into passion. Tomorrow's exhibition awaited, an opportunity to not only present their father's legacy, but to unveil hidden strength within herself. The moment of truth arrived, and she was determined to seize it. The air vibrated with unspoken challenges awaiting them. Once the curtains parted, Would they hold strong against the weight of scrutiny? Chloe awoke the next morning with a sense of urgency buzzing in her veins. Sunlight filtered through the attic windows, casting playful shadows on her half-finished canvas. The excitement from last night's creative surge still coursed through her, yet it mingled with an undercurrent of apprehension. Today was not just any day. It was an opportunity to stand in front of others and share the legacy she had feared so deeply. As she stood by the mirror, Chloe scrutinized her reflection. The lines of uncertainty twisted around her brow, a stark reminder of the self-image that had plagued her for far too long. She practiced her speech in silence, affirming her resolve to be open, to expose her journey, a journey that mirrored her father's struggles. Yet, with every word, her unease amplified, nagging at the edges of her consciousness. What if her voice faltered? What if the weight of their father's legacy was too much to bear? Could she articulate the depth of her vulnerabilities to a world she felt had never fully embraced her? Steeling herself, Chloe donned a carefully chosen outfit, opting for colors that resonated with her emerging confidence. She stepped into the living room, where Emma, bright and bubbling, was busy preparing their artworks. The contrast between Chloe's quiet contemplation and Emma's exuberance only heightened the cocktail of emotions swirling inside her. Ready? Emma's enthusiasm was contagious. "I think so," Chloe replied cautiously, her heart racing. Emma paused, her eyes narrowing with concern. "You're more than ready, Chloe. Remember what we talked about turning fear into something powerful?" Chloe nodded, her mind flashing back to the letters filled with words of encouragement from their father. What would he say now, standing alongside her? Would he see the significance of this moment? She could almost feel his presence, urging her onward. Arriving at the venue, they were greeted by a mixed crowd of family, friends, and community members. The air hung thick with anticipation, and Chloe felt her emotions rise, an intoxicating mix of hope and dread. As more people gathered, she took solace in Emma's steady presence beside her, recognizing the profound bond of sisterhood that fortified her own spirit. The time came for Chloe to step forward. She approached the small podium, a nervous knot tightening in her stomach. As she spoke her father's words aloud, it resonated through her, unlocking feelings that had once been prisoner to doubt. "To speak the truth is to illuminate the dark," she began, her voice trembling but resolute. With every word, memories poured forth, memories of love, resilience, and the struggle against his own demons. What emerged from her heart was an unveiling, a raw testament of their shared experience. The weight of judgment she had internalized began to lift, replaced by an unexpected strength. The audience listened intently, and for the first time, Chloe caught glimmers of empathy in their expressions. Yet her journey wasn't merely about sharing her father's legacy. It was a reclamation of her own narrative, a bold exploration of her complexities, her aspirations, and her fears. She realized that confronting the skepticism of the community leader was merely a subplot in her greater story. She was rewriting the script that had once been dictated by self-doubt and external judgment. As she concluded, a newfound warmth enveloped her. The applause that erupted felt like a lifeline, reminding her that vulnerability could indeed foster connection. But a subtle shift in the crowd's energy caught her off guard. A familiar criticism bubbling beneath the surface, nestled in the gaze of that very leader. The moment marked a turning point. Her heart dropped. Would her courage be met with ridicule, or would it kindle a dialogue long overdue? Thoughts cascaded through her mind. Today's sharing was merely the beginning, yet the shadows of past judgments clawed at her resolve. What would happen when she faced that skepticism, stripped of the protective layers she had pieced together? The exhibition had become both an unveiling and a prelude, preparing Chloe for the deeper struggles that lay ahead. Could she wield her story as a tool for compassion rather than a shield against ridicule? Behind the applause, an impending confrontation loomed. The real test was yet to come. As the applause faded, Chloe felt the warmth of appreciation wrap around her, a comforting layer against the chill of impending judgment. Yet right beneath that comfort lingered a gnawing discomfort. The crowd's response created a dissonance. It was a triumphant moment marred by the knowing gaze of the community leader. Chloe could sense that conversation hovering, taunting her with both the desire for validation and the fear of backlash. She stepped down from the podium, her heart racing, not with elation, but with the urgency to confront the knife's edge of her fears. Emma's reassuring smile broke through her whirlwind of thoughts. "You were incredible, Chloe," she whispered, pride radiating from her sister's eyes. But even that bolstering compliment couldn't drown out the voice of doubt echoing in Chloe's mind. The leader approached, his expression unreadable. Chloe's stomach twisted as he walked closer, each step reverberating with potential conflict. She took a deep breath, planting her feet firmly on the ground, determined to engage rather than retreat. "Chloe," he began, his tone deceptively calm. That was quite an emotional display. Words lodged in her throat. Did he intend to belittle her vulnerability, or was it an unintentional slight? She weighed the tone against her experiences. "Thank you," she managed, forcing her voice steady. "It was important for me to share." "Important is one word for it," he countered, his brow furrowing with skepticism. "But let's talk about reality. These narratives, they can easily sway into sentimentality." Chloe felt the tension grip her. A torrent of potential retorts surged within her. Perhaps he didn't understand what it meant to share one's truth, to harness pain into purpose. "Sentimentality is reality for many, especially those who live in its shadow," she countered, grounding her words in her own experiences, summarizing her story without letting bitterness seep into her tone. He paused, considering her words, which sent a flicker of hope through her. Could they forge a dialogue from this confrontation? She took another step forward, not willing to be deterred. "You talk about reality, but isn't it about transforming those shadows into strength?" His gaze shifted, revealing a crack in his polished demeanor. Curiosity or mere disbelief? Chloe took it as an invitation. This was her moment to reframe the narrative. "Those shadows have defined me, but they don't control me," she proclaimed, her words gaining strength as she unfolded the layers of her journey. Battles with self-doubt, recent triumphs, and the ongoing struggle against societal expectations. "I'm reclaiming these experiences, not for pity, but to inspire change. I didn't just share a story, I opened a door." The leader regarded her closely, and in that vulnerable space, Chloe discovered an inner resolve. She wasn't merely the daughter of a troubled man. She was a woman crafting her own identity, grappling with life's complexities. The leader, perhaps unexpectedly, narrowed his eyes, as if recalibrating his perceptions of her legacy. "Then perhaps your story deserves a second look," he said, almost consideringly. "But it wouldn't hurt to have a more grounded approach next time." Chloe nodded, absorbing the implied truce. But even as she left the meeting, doubt hovered. Was he truly willing to engage, or merely placate her? She needed to prepare herself for whatever rebuttals his skepticism might construct next. Returning home, the warmth of the day faded into a chilly night. Everything she experienced swirled in her head. Were these attempts at confrontation merely the prelude to a critical showdown? Looking at the half-finished canvas from earlier, a surge of inspiration hit her anew. It was time to channel these experiences into her art, perhaps even a series representing these struggles, true representations of vulnerability in a world so quick to judge. She rolled the canvas upright, the strokes flickering with emotion. Each stroke carried the weight of her journey, a reflection of her father's struggles, her musings on acceptance, And now, this moment of confrontation. She had once again stepped into the unknown, but not without a means to navigate it. But just as she began to paint, the phone beeped with a message, a summons for a follow-up meeting with the community leader. Uncertainty tightened around her once again. What did he expect now? As she stared at the blank canvas, contemplating the bridge between her art and her evolving narrative, a question nagged at her. How far was she truly willing to go to redefine her legacy? The crossroads of self-expression and societal acceptance had drawn her into deeper terrain. It was not just about facing the leader anymore. It was about whether she could challenge the very narrative she lived in. Would she rise against the tides of judgment? The next chapter in her story demanded more than just courage. It called for an unyielding resolve to reshape her destiny. Chloe paced the floor of her studio, her heart thudding loudly in her chest. The message from the community leader had left her emotions frayed, an invitation wrapped in ambiguity. Part of her longed for clarity, while another part bristled at the thought of further scrutiny. She couldn't afford to let his skepticism undermine the progress she had made. Drawing in a deep breath, she turned her attention back to the canvas. Each square inch stirred within her an urgency to express herself fully, to dismantle the barriers erected by others' perceptions. The shadows of doubt clung to her like a second skin, but she felt a flicker of defiant spark within, a reminder that her journey was hers to narrate. The follow-up meeting would be pivotal. She needed to arm herself with her story, sharpen her arguments, and present her artwork as the embodiment of her truth. Chloe envisioned her series forming a bridge between testimony and transformation, reflecting not just pain, but the strength woven through resilience. As she stood before the canvas, brush in hand, vivid images coursed through her mind. Fragmented memories of her father, the hardships they endured, and the growth she had achieved in the face of adversity. Each stroke became both a confrontation with the past and a declaration of her strength. This process wasn't just about external acceptance, it was about internal validation. Lost in the rhythm of her painting, a sudden realization struck her. The community leader's skepticism was not the real enemy. That lay within her own doubts, those lingering emotions that rooted her in fear. If she could shift her focus, channel the energy she once spent on battling external perceptions into cultivating her self-worth, she could dismantle the chains of judgment and begin crafting her narrative on her terms. The following day, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror, assessing the reflection that stared back. The glimmer of determination had grown brighter. She realized that confronting the community leader would be more than a debate over perceptions. It was about reclaiming her voice, reaffirming her place in her story. No longer would she be merely an echo of her father's legacy or a vessel for the shadows of her past. "Be bold," she whispered to herself, heartened by the valor she'd drawn from her journey thus far. Arriving at the scheduled meeting, Chloe's pulse quickened at the sight of the leader. The room was an arena, yet she refused to see it that way. Instead, it was a creative space, a platform to showcase not just her art, but the essence of who she was becoming. He leant back in his chair, arms crossed, all too aware of the gravity of his previous remarks. As she prepared her presentation, the words flowed naturally, weaving threads of vulnerability into a tapestry of strength. With every image she revealed, she mirrored her emotions on the canvas. Every brushstroke an articulation of her struggles, her growth, and her relentless pursuit of identity. As Chloe spoke candidly about her artwork, she noticed the leader's expression shift. The tension in his posture eased slightly, replaced by a hint of curiosity as he absorbed her vision. The atmosphere transformed. The stakes were no longer about contention, but collaboration. And yet, beneath that flicker of hope lurked an undertow of trepidation. Would he genuinely appreciate the depth of her experience, or would his skepticism resurface? The question seemed to ripple through the air, demanding to be addressed. With her heart pounding, she asked him directly, "What do you see in my work? How does it resonate beyond the sentimentality?" His gaze captivated hers, and for a fleeting moment they suspended doubt and fear. She could sense the weight of introspection in his silence. This was a moment of reckoning, not just for him, but for her as well. As their conversation unfolded, Chloe understood that this was only the beginning. The invitation to engage with her art had opened a door not merely to an external dialogue, but to an internal one she had long sought. And as she settled into this newfound connection, the tension of uncertainty reappeared, reminding her that clarity often came drenched in ambiguity. The leader was intrigued, but would he support her journey? The outcome remained unknown, yet the resolve to confront what lingered within her felt imperative. The series of choices ahead loomed before her, daring her once more. How would she shape her legacy amid the complexity of acceptance and understanding? The canvas behind her waited, a silent witness to the battle she had fought and the war she was still waging within. Chloe felt the weight of decisions await. Would embracing vulnerability ultimately become her greatest strength? Chloe emerged from her meeting with a newfound energy pulsing through her veins. She had peeled back the layers of her fears, revealing a fierce desire to assert her identity. Walking through the studio, a mix of exhilaration and uncertainty threaded through her thoughts, pushing her to consider the implications of her interaction with the community leader. Each breath met with the question lingering in the corners of her mind: could vulnerability truly be a weapon? When she returned to her canvas, the taunts of self-doubt lurked just beyond her focus. The colors of her palette seemed to echo the battle she faced. Bright hues clashed against dark shadows, reflecting the internal struggle regarding acceptance and acknowledgement. With trembling hands, she reached for the brush, dipping it into a rich crimson. As the first stroke met the canvas, she envisioned it as the embodiment of her pain from the past, each mark an expression of suppressed feelings, a rebellion against the lingering perceptions of her identity. She resolutely immersed herself in the art, harnessing those raw emotions. She realized that the canvas was not merely a surface to present her creativity. It was a confessional, a sanctuary where she could confront every fracture and blemish on her soul. Chloe recalled the community leader's thoughtful gaze, the gradual shift in his body language as she disclosed her visions and struggles. If he could embrace her story, might others follow suit? Yet that hope was tethered by fear. Fear that vulnerability could be perceived as weakness, a risk not everyone was willing to undertake. She wrestled with the notion that authenticity may invite criticism instead of camaraderie. With each brushstroke, an epiphany blossomed within her. Transparency could also be a source of empowerment. This display of honesty might venture beyond mere acceptance. It could inspire others to engage with their own narratives. Would they see their unfiltered selves reflected in her art? Could her paintings serve as a mirror, urging others to confront their own vulnerabilities? Taking a step back, Chloe surveyed the progression on the canvas. She noticed a pattern emerging, a depiction of resilience intertwined with the threads of struggle. The darker hues, once mere representations of her pain, began to serve a dual purpose. They were not just shadows, but a necessary contrast to the vibrant moments of triumph that punctuated her life. Just as she recognized this balance, a flash of self-awareness flickered through her thoughts. It wasn't just about how others perceived her work. It was about how she perceived herself through her own creations. The purpose of her art expanded into a vehicle for personal empowerment. Dismantling the lingering doubts meant fully embracing her narrative. What if through her art she crafted a legacy that stood resilient and transformative? Yet clarity came at a cost. As she delved deeper into this realm of self-exploration, Chloe understood she needed to face her past head-on. The memories of her father were not simply shadows haunting her artwork, but rather the essence fueling it. Appreciating the complexity of those memories would require embarking on a journey of introspection, one that might yield uncomfortable truths. Chloe inhaled deeply, the weight of the moment pressing upon her. This was not a simple resolution, but a pivotal crossroads. The pain of confronting her past loomed like a specter, daring her to engage with the raw emotions buried within. Determination surged within her. She would explore both the light and the dark. Becoming a conduit for others meant she must first navigate her own emotions, transforming pain into profound statements. She grasped the brush tighter, her pulse quickening with resolve. But the question loomed larger. Was she truly ready to unearth everything lurking in the shadows? As she painted, each stroke began to twist and turn into an uncharted territory, and Chloe felt the foundation of her identity shift beneath her. Previously firm beliefs teetered on the brink of discovery. Little did she know that the upcoming days would demand every ounce of strength as she delved deeper into her lineage and the sacrifices made. What was it that she feared uncovering? The canvas before her stood resolutely, a testament to both her past and her evolving self. Tomorrow would not just reveal her journey, but would challenge her to face the truths she had long buried, setting the stage for a confrontation that promised to be both illuminating and harrowing. Chloe rose the next day with a sense of foreboding, the gravitational pull of her memories threatening to anchor her in dread. As the daylight streamed through her studio windows, illuminating the remnants of her last night's work, she felt both invigorated and terrified. Today would not just be another brush on canvas. It would be the beginning of a deeper exploration into who she truly was, a confrontation that could shatter or rebuild her identity. She stood in front of the blank canvas, feeling the weight of the brush as if it were a sword. Each moment of stillness amplified the internal dialogue, the whispers questioning her capability to face the truths that had long evaded her grasp. What was she really afraid of discovering? Would understanding her past grant her freedom, or would it tighten the chains she felt binding her? Chloe began by sketching out ideas, not just shapes but feelings, intertwining the joy and sorrow that illuminated her father's influence in her life. She remembered afternoons spent painting together, the innocent laughter overshadowed by moments of unapproachable distance. The colors she chose felt symbolic, blues for the melancholy he felt, yellows representing his vibrant laughter, and greens embodying the envy that sometimes marred their relationship. As she painted, anger bubbled up, surfacing in harsh strokes that only partially masked the deep sadness beneath. Was it unfair to feel this duality? She wanted to honor his memory, but was also haunted by unanswered questions. Why did he choose to close off, and why did she allow it? Each drop of paint felt like a confession, an effort to summon an understanding of the legacy he left behind. With each layer applied, her brush transformed into a tool of revelation. She realized how those colors were her emotional language, a means of communicating thoughts her mouth never found the courage to express. Each brushstroke acted like a pulse of courage, pushing her to embrace the conflicting emotions that defined her relationship with her father. Would her art be able to capture the complexity of love and loss intertwined? Chloe paused, stepped back from her canvas. The brightness of the yellows had started to overtake the blues, and she needed to find balance. How could she portray the vibrant memories while also honoring the grief tied to them? This was not just about him, it was about her, how she transformed those layered experiences into strength. Yet right before her eyes, the colors battled, mirroring her internal conflict. She stopped, her heartbeat synchronizing with the paint's rhythm. Chloe realized that this dissonance was a truth she couldn't shy away from. The vibrant moments should shoot through the darkness, each one a precious reminder that joy and pain could coexist. In that instant, a new thought crystallized. Perhaps her father's struggles were as much a part of her art's narrative as her triumphs. Each brushstroke could become a piece of her legacy, a testament to understanding rather than simply forgiving. She stepped in closer and with renewed energy allowed the darker hues to rise and intertwine with the brighter shades. The air in the studio shifted, a silent agreement that this journey of revelation would challenge her, but it also promised transformation. The conversation would extend beyond mere understanding. It would ripple outwards, resonating with others grappling with their own tangled histories and uncommunicated feelings. But as Chloe pursued this illuminating path, a new question coiled within her mind. What if the act of discovery did not lead to solace, but to confrontation, forcing her to face not just the truths about her father, but about herself? What hidden aspects of her identity remained to be explored? Determined, she picked up the brush once more, knowing that each stroke beckoned a deeper clarity, but also the risk of unraveling everything she thought she knew about herself. Would she be able to bear the weight of that revelation? Tomorrow she would need more than just paint. She would need a fortitude she had yet to fully address. The walls she had built around herself were about to be tested. Would she rise to the challenge or retreat once again into the shadows of her own making? Chloe awoke with a renewed sense of purpose, her surroundings vibrating with the unsaid words and unexpressed emotions that lingered in her studio. Today was not merely another day. It marked the continuation of her transformative journey, where art would serve as both a mirror and a battleground for her internal strife. She could feel an insatiable urge to dig deeper, to excavate the memories buried beneath layers of unresolved feelings. She approached her canvas, determined to forge a visual narrative that accurately represented her tumultuous connection with her father. The initial sketches now felt like a faint echo. Chloe knew it was time to give those initial ideas substance, texture, depth. Each stroke of paint would symbolize not just the love shared, but the pain that often interrupted their joyous moments. The palette before her was wide and inviting, beckoning her to make choices that could capture the intricacies of her emotions. As she dared to mix colors in ways she hadn't before, bold reds with vibrant yellows, she recognized that she was not just layering paint, but layering her own personal story. The red spoke of passion, anger, and frustration, while the yellow produced an undercurrent of warmth and brightness, reminiscent of childhood laughter. In each combination, new revelations sprang forth. Chloe's brush began to move independently, driven by instincts awakened during her last session. She no longer just painted, she confronted the tumult that resided within. The canvas morphed into a confessional space where she started to articulate the chaotic love she shared with her father. Would he approve of this honest portrayal? Did approval matter if this painting was for her own liberation? With every bold stroke, clarity emerged, orchestrating an internal shift. The chaotic emotions began to form a coherent narrative, her father's vulnerabilities coming into focus. Chloe recognized that she had suppressed her own fear of vulnerability all her life, often simply mirroring the walls he built around himself. Perhaps this was what had hindered her growth as an artist. She had been too afraid to expose not just his cracks, but her own. As the light played off the evolving canvas, Chloe felt herself confronting a deeper revelation. She realized that the art could profoundly narrate the struggle for connection that had defined her relationship with her father. With each layer, she confronted her fear of rejection, her fear of connection, and even her fear of being perceived as weak. The act of creating became her catharsis. But amidst this enlightenment lay the persistent shadow of uncertainty. What would happen when the canvas was complete? Would the act of fully acknowledging their intertwined struggles lead to a resolution, or would it deepen the rift she felt, a heartbreaking conclusion that perhaps the pain of their past was destined to endure? She paused again, her gaze tracing the edges of her painting. This moment felt like a pivotal juncture, one that could herald a change not just on canvas, but within her psyche. She needed encouragement, mentorship, and artistic community that could foster discussion around her truths instead of merely validating her accomplishments. Her previous isolation heightened her anxiety, but she forced herself to linger in that discomfort. Taking a deep breath, Chloe picked up her phone, the soft glow illuminating her face. It was time to reach out. She began typing to an art collective she had long admired, a group known for encouraging vulnerability in creative expression. As she hit send, she recognized that by sharing her evolving journey and feelings publicly, she was risking exposure, but also paving the path for deeper connections. With anticipation swirling in her stomach, she glanced back at her canvas, eager to proceed with a fresh vitality. No longer was she merely an observer of her past. Today, she would continue to be both artist and subject. It was in this complex duality that her greatest potential thrived. But the question lingered: would she be ready to meet the reactions that surfaced from these new connections? The moment of truth felt imminent, and as Chloe turned back to her painting, she understood she stood on the precipice of discovery, not just about her art, but about her very self. Would this new chapter reveal warmth and acceptance, or would it plunge her into the heart of conflict once again? Chloe stood before her canvas, feeling its surface pulse beneath her fingertips, an extension of her thoughts and emotions. The brush in her hand felt like a magic wand, capable of conjuring both beauty and chaos. As she resumed painting, the chaotic love she had captured began to emanate warmth, but the apprehension of what lay ahead gnawed at her with every stroke. Had reaching out truly been the right decision? It was a risk. She could be met with silence, or worse, judgment. But as her hands danced across the canvas, colors merging and intertwining in harmonious disarray, she chose to believe in the potential of this connection. This vulnerability could be her salvation, or at least a bridge to something greater. Thoughts of the art collective began to swirl in her mind. The mentorship and guidance she hoped to gain could expedite her journey toward artistic authenticity. The idea filled her with energy. She envisioned a space filled with creatives who dared to peel back the layers of their souls, just as she was trying to do. Each layer she painted felt like a layer she could shed. With renewed resolve, Chloe concentrated on a stark section within her painting, a gaping void of dark hues where chaos reigned. It represented the most tumultuous moments with her father, shouts echoing off the walls of her childhood home, misunderstandings that spiraled into arguments. It terrified her to confront this in color, but the act of doing so brought about an unexpected clarity. Dipping her brush into a thick, dark purple, she began to fill the void, allowing herself to remember, to feel, to acknowledge. The purple symbolized the grief that had followed their arguments, the deep sadness threaded through their relationship. With each stroke, she embraced this darkness, understanding that it needed to be part of her story, but it didn't have to define her. As the canvas transformed, she found fragments of light streaking through the shadows. Soft pink and pale blue were breaking free from the darkness, embodying hope and reconciliation. She was crafting a visual language that transcended mere representation. She was composing a symphony of her pain and growth. The act of creation itself began to forge a path toward acceptance, not just of her relationship with her father, but of herself as an artist and a person. Mid-stroke, her phone buzzed, vibrating through the charged air of her studio. She wiped her hands on her smock and glanced down. A response from the art collective. Heart racing, she opened the message and read it twice. "Thank you for sharing your journey with us. We'd love to discuss your work further." Relief flowed over her, tempered by the familiar uncertainty that crept in. Did they truly understand her? Would they be able to see beyond the surface of her art? With this opportunity came an intense pressure to articulate her experiences clearly. Chloe was acutely aware that to share her artistry and her story meant opening herself to critique, to potential rejection. Yet, the prospect of finding her voice amidst like-minded creatives made her pulse quicken. Perhaps this was what she had been missing, a community where raw expressions of struggle and triumph were celebrated. As twilight poured through the studio windows, casting a soft glow over her work, Chloe stood back to allow herself a moment of reflection. The painting breathed life. It was a visual testament to her internal struggle, a synthesis of connection and discord. Yet, even as the excitement bubbled within her, another thought loomed large. She was not merely preparing for a new artistic dialogue. She was about to confront the most vulnerable parts of herself, the parts she had only just begun to unravel. Was she strong enough to face the truth in the reactions of others, to lean into the discomfort that came with growth? Chloe took a deep breath, eyes fixed on her canvas where layers of emotion communicated a story yearning to be heard. The imminent discussion with the collective loomed. Her next move could alter everything. In that moment, with the anticipation both thrilling and terrifying, she understood one profound truth. True artistic vulnerability could lead to healing, but it also risked exposing her deepest insecurities. The question now lingered, haunting yet magnetic. When she shared her story with the world, what part of herself would emerge? Would she be ready for what lay on the other side of that exchange? Chloe stepped into the sunlight spilling through her studio window, the brightness illuminating not just her art, but also a pathway she had yet to traverse fully. The painting before her was now a tapestry of color, both vibrant and somber, each stroke narrating her history, her struggles, and ultimately her triumphs. She could feel her heart beating with purpose. Today was the day she would unveil her journey to the art collective, and with it she would unveil herself. As she prepared for the upcoming discussion, Chloe's thoughts turned towards the stillness within her. The darkness she had transformed into vivid purples had finally birthed light, manifesting in soft hues of pink and blue, the colors of hope and acceptance. Could she articulate this journey to an audience who might hold both skepticism and compassion in equal measure? The mingling of fear and excitement stirred within her, a reminder of every brushstroke that had led her to this moment. Arriving at the meeting, Chloe felt a wave of warmth wash over her as she was greeted by fellow artists, each one unmistakably a tapestry of their own stories. The atmosphere buzzed with a familiar tension, but instead of shying away, Chloe clenched her hands and steadied herself. She was not here as a mere participant. She was here as a courageous voice seeking dialogue. As she began to speak, Chloe found her words flowing effortlessly, fueled by the authenticity she had cultivated. "Art to me is a bridge," she stated boldly. "It connects us across the gaps of misunderstanding and creates space for vulnerability. My work captures my familial struggles, each layer on the canvas depicting not just our pain, but the resilience that flowed from it." With every word, she felt the weight lift, revealing her narrative without reservation. She shared the complexities of her relationship with her father, allowing them to witness the messy intersection of love and grief. Each story unfolded like a mural, pain interwoven with joy, capturing the essence of their time together. As the conversation unfolded, warm reactions twinkled in the eyes of her peers. They reflected understanding, empathy, and acknowledgement of the struggles she depicted. The leader of the collective leaned forward, visibly invested. "You've captured the nuanced dance between light and dark beautifully, Chloe," he remarked. "The way you translate vulnerability into strength is not just admirable, it's vital. Your work can resonate with so many who faced similar battles within their own stories." In that moment, Chloe felt a profound shift. Once skeptical of her own narrative and fearful of judgment, she now saw the tangible value in her art. Vulnerability had transformed from a weight into her most potent weapon, an instrument of connection rather than isolation. Instead of merely revealing her past struggles, she discovered her art formed a liberating dialogue, encouraging others to forge their own paths of self-exploration. After the meeting, Chloe stood outside under the canopy of twilight, breathing in the crisp evening air. She felt a surge of accomplishment course through her veins. No longer shackled by the fear of being misunderstood, she found herself rooted in her identity as both an artist and an individual. Each look at her completed canvas echoed the stories shared, articulating her journey of pain, healing, and resilience. Back in her studio, she gazed at her artwork, no longer just colors on a canvas, but vibrant pieces of her legacy coming together in harmony. The thought of her father's struggles, transformed through her own lens, burgeoned within her with raw honesty. This artistic achievement marked not just the culmination of her labor, but the defining moment of her identity. Chloe knew then that this was the start of her new journey. She had conquered the shadows of her insecurities, and in doing so, had illuminated pathways for others walking similar routes of self-discovery. With renewed confidence, Chloe pledged to continue honing her art and sharing her narrative to foster more dialogues like the one she had just experienced. She was no longer merely the daughter of a troubled man. She had established herself as a distinct voice within the artistic community. Thus emerged Chloe, the artist ready to embrace and reshape her legacy, playing a vital role in the tapestry of stories yet to unfold. Now that you've witnessed this journey of transformation, you need to subscribe now to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about Chloe's journey, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring conclusion.